guess that could come under question 6 in a way, in really how you set up and plan your session. Obviously, you planned your session in advance before you get there, and obviously the coach's role is observing during the session if the players are understanding their objectives or the outcomes they're trying to achieve. If they are not enjoying it, you've got to ask a question as a coach: have I pitched it too hard? Is it too easy so they become bored? Is it not challenging enough? And I think to gain players' attention, if that happens, I've sometimes gone straight into a game. I've had to switch from the session I wanted to be doing, or the start of my session, because things weren't quite right, they weren't concentrating enough. I've gone straight into a game with constraints in the game and challenged them that way, and then I've played for a certain amount of time, and then I've gone back to my session to really see if now I've got on focus. They played a game, bam, we're going back to the session now, and we'll finish the game after the session. And you're just constantly trying to keep them concentrated in their session so that they're progressing and learning and understanding what the outcomes of the session are. But again, it's down to the skills of the coach, to how you break it down. This whole session now, I feel does help that. So never be afraid of changing what you're doing if it's not working, because we have to be adaptable and flexible as coaches. We go there with the best intentions of a planned session in mind, but we know from experience it's never going to be a smooth journey in that session. And I think the skill of the coaches, breaking it down, simplifying it, changing the size of the area. Is the size of the area too big? Is the size of the area too small? That's why they're not getting success. So you really have to look at the task that you set them and the size of the area you've set the task up in, because then you can it helps you then adjust and change the session accordingly to the needs of the players. I think it's great that you're planning your session, and again, for me, if you're planning a session where you want them to play backwards, set the pitch up in 3/3. You can be the coach on the side that plays a ball into the midfield third and condition the game that before they can go forward they've got to go back into the defensive third. You can condition it so there's a set number of passes in the defensive third before it can then go forward into the midfield third, or bypass the midfield third and play into the attacking third if you've got a forward pass. As it goes into the attacking third, you might condition it and say, well look, unless they can, you have to make it realistic. If they can score straight away, you have to let them score straight away. Otherwise, if you're saying, well no, you can't score, you've got to come backwards, well that doesn't relate to the game then. So it's not realistic. But you can put constraints on the game if you want them to learn when to go back. And I think then let them play and make the decisions themselves when to go forward, when to go back. And if you think you want to keep changing it, just say, blow the whistle and say, every time I blow the whistle, wherever the ball is, it has to go back before it can go forward. So put those constraints on your training session and on your game or your final game, and then you'll be able to do that. Limit the amount of touches in each third of the field before getting that shot on goal or before playing a forward pass, and then that's the skills of the coach again in setting up the session accordingly so that it is patient build-up. If you look at all the good teams, they all want to go forward, and we try to play forward every time we receive the ball. When I play forward, I'm trying to play to a player who's in a position to play forward himself. We want to get in that final third as quick as we can to get shots on goal. So and put the pressure on the opposition. But if we can't, then we've got to go into the patient build-up. If we're defending deep, what is counter-attacking? We're looking to get the ball and we're looking to play forward as quickly as we can to counter-attack. But if we can't counter-attack, we've got to build up, have a patient build-up. So then again, it's down to the coach putting constraints on his training session, constraints on the game, so that the players understand when to go forward, when to go back, and keep retention of the ball. Okay? I think that. Again, I'm not sure if this question is for a small-sided game or for 11-a-side game. I think if players, it's always a given to me that when you lose possession, your first thought is, can we win it back quickly? Have we got a time constraint on how quickly we try and press the ball to win it back? and if we don't win it back in a certain amount of time, we all funnel back behind the ball. So there's two ways to play this, really. You either put constraints on that you're playing your session, you're playing and you're letting them play forward, and then you're just letting them lose the ball in a certain area of the field, and wherever they lose the ball, get everybody to recover back behind the ball. Now if they lose it in a defensive third, it becomes very hard. Midfield players have to get back because you're going to be stretched out. If you're trying to play out from the back, you're going to be stretched out from a team. So the key is, if you're losing it in that defensive third, you've got to delay. You've got to get somebody putting pressure on that ball to try and delay the opposition attacking you very quickly. That allows time for the other players to get back behind the ball. If it's in midfield, the same thing. You're all stretched out, you've got to funnel back behind the ball. If it's in the attacking third, it might be an attack that's broken down, or the ball's gone to the goalkeeper's hands. As soon as it does, everybody funnels back towards the halfway line. Get yourself in a nice compact shape, and then be patient then on working out who's the trigger for the press. Who's that one that makes the decision? As soon as the first one goes on the press, the rest of the team have to follow. If not, we're not pressing as a team now, and that's got to be the challenge for us when we're pressing. We have to go together to try and win that ball back. A big thing for me, if you're shipping goals because you're not getting back, there's something in the mindset of the players that they just can't be bothered, or they're not getting back quick enough. So start building up on that whenever we lose the ball, depending on where we lose it, somebody's got to get out and delay, everybody else recovers to shape. That compact shape. We have a saying that over us, round us, never through us. So if we're a good compact shape, they can't get through us, and we have to recover and have points on the pitch that they have to recover to. Whatever system you're playing, they have to recover to that. So I wasn't sure if it was for small-sided. It's still the same focus on getting back behind the ball as if it's 11-a-side. So I hope that's answered that question. This is the eternal question that we always get asked as coaches, and for me, in the foundation phase, it very much is. Excuse me, get my pen. It very much is about rotation of positions. So in the foundation phase, all the way up to under 11, while preferring to play in one position, players are rotating positions accordingly. I used to get this all the time. So in the small-sided game, when is the game 9-a-side? Well, the only time the game is 9-a-side is when the referee blows his whistle. The game is dictated by where the opposition play the ball, where the ball goes to, and that affects my positioning, or whether I'm pressing the ball. Sometimes I'm having to hold my shape in the defensive third, sometimes I'm having to push up into the midfield third, sometimes into the attacking third, especially if I'm in possession. So as a starting point, we're in shape, and then it becomes a small-sided game wherever the ball goes. There's people around the ball doing something around the ball, and the rest are taking up positions accordingly. Then the ball gets moved somewhere else, then we're doing exactly the same. People are recovering to a little bit of defensive shape while somebody's now going out to try and win the ball back, and it becomes a small group game in another part of the field. When we win the ball back, then we've got to be in positions to counter-attack quickly. If we can't, then we're having to play a patient build-up game. It's as simple as that. So really, I like rotation. While some will have a preference, obviously, if you've got lads who are really early developers, physical maturers, if you like, and are really big, the chances are that they're playing in a defensive position, or they're in goal, or they're a striker, whereas everybody else is rotating around. But I still like players rotating around. We don't know where they're going to end up. In the foundation phase, we don't know where this kid's going to end up as a player finally, especially if we're trying to get him into the professional game. So in the foundation phase, it's always about rotation. As they go into the youth phase, for me, it's still about rotation up until the age of 14, 15, where they're nailing a position down, while still understanding 2 or 3 other positions, mind. But they're nailing a position down that gives them the best chance to progress and earn a scholarship. So slightly different for the professional game as the grassroots, but I think really it's the same principle. They should be majoring a position maybe at 14 or 15. 14 and 15 where they're nailing that position down. But illness will affect us, players' unavailability, players are suspended, so you've got to be adaptable and flexible. I remember one time at Southampton, we'd signed on a lot of players in the foundation phase of a certain age group, and when they got up to the age of 12, when they went into 11-a-side, when we were trying to put them into positions, I think we had 9 midfield players. We didn't have central defenders, right backs, we had a few centre forwards, a couple of wide players, so we really had to think about how we built the foundation phase up then in terms of rotating these players around, because you can't go into a 11-a-side game and all of a sudden you got 9 midfield players. It just doesn't work, and then you have got problems with where you play players. So for me, like you say, and like you're doing already, I think you're doing a good job at rotating them around in certain positions. They'll have a preference, and I think the way I've explained it is he will play in his preferred position, but I have to put him in other positions because that's my job as a coach, to help him develop and understand the game. And the roles and responsibilities that go with different positions on the field of play. So I hope that's... Good question. As a player, I probably think I wasted my career, but as I was in my early 30s, I was the captain of the team. We used to play in what is now the League of Wales. It was the Welsh League in those days, and it was a decent standard. And I used to get involved with the manager, being the captain, and I used to get involved in the warm-ups and the training sessions and helping setting up of the sessions. So I suppose my manager at the time then said to me, look, why I can't make it one night, you take the session. And I got involved in coaching that way, and I'd be coaching the team as well as trying to keep my own fitness levels up. And then after a while I got asked to take the youth team. We had a youth team, an under-18 team that played in the Welsh League that covered the whole of Wales. So, and they played on a Sunday. They trained different nights to us, so it didn't affect my training nights. So I got involved with the youth team. We had a bit of success. They were a decent squad of players, in all fairness. One of the players was signed on by Norwich City, a lad called Tommy Ramasid, who had a career in the game. He's now the head of coaching at Cardiff City Academy, my hometown club. And the other one was Simon Holworth, who had a really good career in the game and came out of it with a bad break, but got into the first team at Cardiff, and then got signed by Coventry City for, I think, for about £650,000, which at the time was a lot of money. So he earned a living in the game. So I got involved in it while I was still playing, so in my early 30s. And from there it sort of took off. Because I had a good youth team, I got asked to join Cardiff City. Will I be interested in becoming the assistant youth team coach there? And from there I started doing my badges, etc. And it set me off on the career that I've been very fortunate to have up until this moment in time. So while I was still playing in my early 30s, that was my first coaching role, if you like. Okay, and I'm presuming, the only regret I have, I wish I'd really started off coaching when I was in my early 20s, while I was still playing, but I mean, I'm going back a long time then. It was never in my wildest dreams in my early 20s that I think I was going to ever be a coach. But a tip to give a young coach, I made a couple of little notes on it, is really to gain as much knowledge as you can. That is going out and observing experienced coaches, getting on the qualifications trail, because I coached for a long time before I started doing my badges. Somebody said, look, if you want to progress in the game, as well, I went to Cardiff City actually, they said, look, if you want to coach at this level, you have to have the qualification. So they set me off on doing my badges, and in those days it used to be the prelim, the intermediate and the senior license. Well, I did the prelim, and if you were good enough, in those days they recommended that you went straight and did your senior license, which is now the A license. which I was very fortunate to get recommended to do. Because I was working with Cardiff City's youth team, I then went on the senior licence and was fortunate enough to pass that and, you know, do the UEFA conversion when it came in later years. So the only way I got experience was by watching experienced coaches. I went and watched as many coaches as I could. There wasn't a vast amount of courses that you could get on in those days, except when you did your badges. So watching other coaches, I used to get that many coaching books to look at, that many coaching videos, VHS, my God, VHS and Betamax in those days, and that's how I learned. And I made so many mistakes, and I probably still am making mistakes, because you never stop learning in this game. So the best tips I can say is get out and observe as many coaches as you can. The biggest thing for me, I never ever got feedback on what my coaching was like. So I was very much fumbling my way through, if you like, with nobody giving me any feedback on how they thought I was coaching. Not until my later years in the professional game. So trying to get an experienced coach to come along and mentor you is vital, you know. And I would really, if there was somebody that you knew or was in the club that was more experienced, could you say, look, could you come on and give me some feedback, watch me come, observe me coach me session, and give me some feedback on that, just so I can then learn. That would be fantastic. So getting somebody to mentor you as a young coach would be ideal. As I said, as many courses as you can get on. You won't like all of them, but you take away something every time that you get on them, something that you think works for you. Develop your own coaching style. Don't be a copycat coach. While I go out, you see somebody do it, you copy it exactly the same way. It doesn't become your session. It's not you. You have to be yourself. So don't be what I call a false coach who just works off a coaching sheet. Anybody can write out a coaching session. The skill of the coach is, how do I progress it from A to B? How do I progress it from B to C? Sometimes I never get off A. I'm approaching A a different way all the time. I never actually get into B. So we're back to the skills of the coach. And what will help you is observation of other coaches, experienced coaches. See how they change things. See how they are adaptable and flexible in their sessions, and also getting that quality feedback from an experienced coach. It will definitely help you. There's been a lot of occasions that come to mind with regard my best achievement. I suppose receiving the Professional Phase Youth Development Coach of the Year award in 2014 told me that I must be doing something right in all the years I've been coaching. I think for me the best achievement is, having worked at academies for a long number of years, when you sign somebody on as an under 8 and you see him progress through every age in that academy right the way through to under 18 and then get into the first team, that's a great feeling for me as a coach, that I've played some part in that player's development along his footballing journey. And I've been very fortunate in my coaching career to have had the chance to coach some really good players that have gone on to get into the first team of the clubs I've worked at, and have become assets for the club, have gone on to bigger clubs for then obviously for big money. So the club has got quality money back for that player, for all the years of coaching and education we put into that player. So I feel that I've been very privileged to have this coaching career, and I think, you know, the big thing for me is a lot of the players that I've coached over the years still keep in touch with me, and it's so nice that when you get a call or a text off a player that you know who's having a great career in the game, or whose career has finished in the game, because I have been coaching for a long time. They still keep in touch. I still have that contact with them, and I think that's brilliant. So, you know, you feel that while you're coaching these players to become the best players they can possibly be, you sometimes make a friend for life, and so there's been a lot of achievements over the way that I'm really proud of, and I think that what I've just spoken about sums it all up really.